Thank you, Mario. Hello. I hope I did well the slide movement there. It's the first time I changed the slides. I'm very proud. All right. Hello. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I have been thinking about making this webinar for some time because not many people talk about the particles in Moho, and I personally think they are very cool. And once you know how to use them, it is very easy to get nice results. So I want to show some simple examples of them and some stuff that you can get from the library, so you can explore what are the settings and how it is done. But the idea is that you will understand how to create the particles yourself this webinar. So please remember, if you have any questions, put it in the chat or in the question window I think you have there, and I will try to answer to anything there. I mean, anything related to particles, really, or other stuff, but mostly particles. So let me show you how it works here. So a particle layer is like a group. So we can basically put anything inside of a particle layer. So by default, when I create a new file of Moho, I have a vector layer. So just to show you how it works, I will create a simple circle here in the center of this layer. So you can see I'm centering it here, and I will paint it black just for better preview here. And now I can create a particle layer. Please remember that I am on frame 0 always. So everything that you build in Moho needs to be done in frame 0. So now I will create a particle layer here, and I will simply drag my vector layer inside of this particle layer. All right. And now when I have the vector layer selected here, I will see only the vector layer. But when I select the particle layer, I will actually see what is happening with the particles. So now if I hit play, you can see that the particles are multiplying this vector layer. All right. Now, when I select a particle layer, there is a new tool here in the special section that is called particle layers, I think. And with this tool, we have these options here. So these are the particle options, all right? And the particle comes with these options that throw these balls up, all right? But to make things easier, I like to reduce all these values to 0. So we can see what of this what each value does for the particles. So I will just reduce all these are different forces of the particles, and I'm just reducing to 0. So first we have the particle count here, which is 100, and then we have the particle preview count, which is 20. So this is made basically because when you have too many particles, the software can become very slow, and it can affect the performance. So you have two values. You have the final particle count, which is 100, which are the number of particles that will appear in your scene when you render it. And then you have the preview, which are the particles that you can see on the screen. Normally, I like to put the same value here. So if I have 100 in one, I like to put 100 on the other one too. All right, so now I am seeing 100 particles. There's not much happening here in the middle, but please believe me, there are 100 balls there moving. All right, then we have the lifetime of the particles, which is by default is 24 frames. This is how much time a particle will last, a single particle will last. This is 1 second, 24 frames. And then we have the source width, which I can modify here. Please remember that I hit play here, so I'm seeing the particles in real time. So I can modify the width, and you can see the particles are being spread, and also the height. All right, so I have some particles here, and it starts to make more sense in terms of particles. And I also have the depth, which move the particles in the depth, in the Z axis. So basically I have particles that are closer to the camera and particles that are farther from the camera. All right, I will reduce this to 0, and I will reduce these numbers a little bit. Then we have the velocity of the particles, and this value will throw the particles up in this case. And here, down here, we have this degree control with which we can select the direction of the particle, right? So everything is very simple here. Then we have the velocity spread, which means like how much the particle will spread, how chaotic in some way the movement will be. Normally, I don't like to use too much spread, but you can test those values here. And finally, from the values here, we have the damping, and that means how much of the movement will be reduced at the end of the life of the particle. So the more damping I have, the more the movement will be reduced. And this is not very clear for this example, but you will see how this value can be useful here. All right, but I will reduce it now. And then we have the acceleration here, which is pointing, but it has a rate of 0. It's pointing right here. But if I give it a different right, it's like I can add some kind of gravity, for instance, or maybe if I am creating some dust, maybe it will go up. So this is a movement independent to the speed, to the velocity of the particle. So it's like a second movement, and it can even contradict the speed. So maybe the speed will send the particles to the right, but then the acceleration will send them to the left. So you have these values here, and you can play with them, but there is nothing too fancy happening here. We are just multiplying this circle. By the way, the circle looks a bit sharp. It has some corners. It doesn't look too round. This is only for the preview, but actually the circles are very round, and they will be very round in the final render. Okay, this is just to improve the performance. Now, one thing that is very important for the particles is that I show you here they have a lifetime. Okay, so in this case they have a lifetime of 24 frames. All right, and one nice thing is that I can actually animate those 24 frames. So now if I select the particle, I can create some animation for this. So let's suppose I want this particle. I will select the transform layer tool, and I will go to frame 1. So maybe I want this particle to start very small, and then at frame, I don't know, at frame 10, it will be bigger, and then at frame 24, it will be very small again. All right. So now if I go back to my particles, to my particle layer, you can see that that animation is being reproduced. So we have something a little bit nicer now. And you can animate anything here. I can even, in this case, I animated the scale, but maybe I can say, okay, at this point, I want the particle to become red. And maybe at frame 24, I want the particle to become blue. So now I have this. All right. So basically, you can add any animation there, and the particles will go from black to red to blue there. Okay, and this is the basic concept about particles. There are other options here that I will show you later, but another nice thing about particles is that I can actually animate the particles. So in this case, the particle is here in the center, but I can also take the particle layer and use the transform layer tool. And I can simply move the particle to the left, for instance. So now I have this animation, and you can see how the particle they are reacting to that animation. So maybe I can add some more keyframes here to get a more chaotic result. So I can animate that, and I can also attach the particle to a bone. So I can make the particle to follow the movement of a bone. Now let me show you some of the scenes that come with the library, so we can see how these values and these options are applied in those scenes. So if you go to the library, let me open it here, and if you go to characters and Moho 13.5, you will find the fox.moho file. Okay, but I will right click this one and I will open this file as a template. All right, because this scene, probably you have seen it. Normally we use this scene to show you how to animate wind, but actually this scene also has some particles here. If you see this light coming here and these pieces of dust, this is all particle moving. So actually, let me find that particle here. I think it is called effects. So I will isolate this layer. I will press Alt on the keyboard and press on the eyes to isolate it. So now you can see this. And let me just remove some of the layers here. And actually to work a bit, to make this a bit easier, I will just copy this entire layer and I will create a new file and paste this layer here because I want to show you how this works without seeing all the other layers. And I will create a black rectangle here just to use as a background. Okay, so I will call this background. It's just a vector layer with a back. All right. So now you can see in this example, I have two particle layers. One is called particles and the other one is called dust. So let's look at the dust first. If I just open this particle layer, you can see there is only one layer here inside. All right, and it is actually a single line here. I can select this, and it is a line that has a brush applied. Okay, and this line is moving to the right. It's becoming a little bit smaller, and then the opacity goes down. So that's basically the movement that it is going. So what I wanted to do here is to simulate that there was a little bit of wind moving this dust, and the dust is created with the brushes and moving it to the right. But I also wanted to simulate like the light coming from in between the leaves of the forest. So that's why I have the opacity here. But basically we have this only element that has a very simple animation, and that one is inside of this particle, and it is being multiplied. All right. So you can see the effect now. It looks like the dust is traveling across. I mean, I hope it looks like that. Maybe with the black background, it doesn't look like that, but that's idea. It's like the dust traveling from left to right and crossing these lines of light here. And if I look at the particle options, you can see here that we have a lifetime of 200 frames because the animation I had for this particle is actually 200. All right. And something interesting about this one is that we have everything, every value on 0. So actually the particles are not throwing at anything. They are not applying any energy to the particles. They are just multiplying the animation I wanted. So I really like to do that. I really like to use the particles to multiply things, but not using the physics of the particles, or not all the time, because sometimes I really want to have control over this, and the way to have control is to apply the animation myself and then just multiply the animation. But I can modify this value. So if I want it a bit wider, I can just set the source width to be wider, and maybe also the height there, or maybe also the depth. But that is how it is done. And another nice thing about particles is that if I select this layer and I double click it, I can open the properties of the vector layer inside of the particle, and I can change the blending mode. So you can see here it has a blending mode of screen. Okay, and this is something that you won't see in the preview, but if I render this, if I go to file, preview, or if I press Ctrl R, it's very subtle here, especially with the black background, but every single one of these particles are applying the screen blending mode to the scene. So let me show you back the actual scene with the fox, because I think it will look better here. If I render this one, and if you wait a little bit because it has too many layers, But you can see that the particle is actually applying a blending mode there. So that blending mode is being applied on every single one of the particles, and it's being added. So the more particles you have together at that point in the scene, the brighter the color will look. So we have that, and that is how it is done. There is nothing too complex here. And now the second part of this is that we have these little points of dust or pollen or something like that here, and that is the second particle we have here. So let me show you this particle here, and you can see the origin there. If I hit play, you can see that it's showing some particles going down, and the particles are moving from side to side. So if I open this particle group, I can see again, I have only one layer inside of the particle. And this layer is actually this little dot, which is a vector. And it has a cycle movement that goes to the right and then back to the left. And since this is a cycle, it will be doing that forever. So going from left to right. And then it has an opacity cycle. So let me show you here. So it has no opacity in frame 1. Then it has full opacity and then no opacity again. And that is a cycle too. So we have this movement. So then I put all this inside of the particle layer, and this particle is simply multiplying that. But now if I open the properties of the particle, you can see I have 50 particles. Maybe I want more. I will put 200 particles there. And you can see the lifetime is 500. This is a very long animation in this case because I want the particles to have enough time to go down, to fall to the ground. So if I give them, for instance, 24 frames of life, you can see the particles are not getting enough life to be on the ground. So that's why I put 500 here, so they have enough time there. And then I have some values of depth, and we have the speed. So in this case, the particle is actually throwing the layers to go down, because if you saw the movement I applied to the particle itself is just going from one side to the other. But the movement to go down is applied with the force of the particle. So you can see here, if I increase the velocity here, you can see the particles are going down faster. Or if I decrease the velocity, they will go slower, like that. All right, so I will just go back to 0.25. And again, I have the spread, but you can see that if I apply more spread, some of the particles are going up and down. They are spreading in different ways, but I don't want a spread for them. All right, but this is how it is done, and I can modify the particle in any way I want, or I can even, something that I like to do when I use particles is that I create a single particle, and once I am happy with the result of that single particle, I duplicate it. And maybe in that duplicate, I don't know, I change let me just select this. I change the size of the particle, and maybe I change the color or the shape or whatever. So let's suppose I want this now. So now I have two particles in the particle layer. So now the particle is multiplying two different particles there. So you have a different effect. And also this particle, maybe if I select this, maybe I want the cycles to be shorter. So I will just make them shorter here in the timeline. I just selected the keyframes and pressed Alt on the keyboard and drag the last keyframe right or left, and I can scale the animation here. So now the cycles are different for both particles. So that is how it works. And of course, in this case, we don't need to move the particle, but if I want, I can still move the particle there, and you will see if you hit play, you will see that the particles are moving there. Since the life of the particle is so long, it still takes 500 frames for the particle to end the movement. So that's why you can see the particles are still moving here. All right, but another thing that I think it's very nice and very easy to do with particles. Let me just create a sky. Again, I will create a black. I just created a new file and I will create a black rectangle here, which will be my sky. And I want to show you some tricks to have particles with 0 duration. In this case, I will just create a circle. Again, I will paint this circle white. Okay, maybe a very small circle. I always use circles, but you can use whatever shape you want. And I want to animate the opacity of this. So let's suppose at this frame, I want this one to go to 0 opacity, and then I don't know, in frame 49, I want the opacity to go back to 100. So I have that, and now I will create a cycle with that. So I will select, I will right click on the last keyframe here, create a cycle. So now I have this movement cycling. All right. So now I can create a particle layer. So I went back to frame 0 and I will create a particle layer here. Put the circle inside of the particle layer. And now with the default values, I just have this. The particles are throwing this up, but I actually want something way simpler. So I want no speed. I want no spread at all. So I will just reduce all these values to 0. And actually I want the lifetime to be 0. And that means that all the particles will last forever. So one particle will appear and that particle will be the same during the entire animation. Okay. So because when you put a limited number of frames, that means that the particle will disappear and another particle will appear somewhere else. So after 24 frames or whatever, this particle disappears and another one appears. So in this case, I will set this to 0. I will increase the width. I will increase the height. All right, so I have this. You can see all the particles are appearing and disappearing at the same time. But what I want to do is I want to also randomize the playback. So when I click this one, you can see now the particles are appearing and disappearing at different times because Moho is randomizing the frame in which they appear. So they are not all starting at the same time. Okay. And now I want, I don't know, 500 particles there. All right, and I will increase the width. I will increase the height, and I will increase also the depth. And maybe these particles are too big for now, so I will go back to the vector layer. And on frame 0, I want this particle to actually be way smaller, like that. Because I want to create something like a sky with the stars. All right. And one nice thing about this is that I have the sky here, and I can even give it some speed. And actually, I will give the particles some lifetime, so I can give it some speed, so we can simulate that we are traveling across the space. So now we have that, for instance. So yeah, you can put your spaceship here, and now you have a spaceship traveling through the space. And this is actually one circle. Another nice thing is that you can, with the rotate layer XY tool, this one, you can actually rotate the particle layer. So you can rotate the particles in 3D. So I don't know how much I don't know how it looks here, but you can see that I'm rotating the origin in 3D. So now I'm actually making the particles to come closer to the camera. So now it feels like I'm traveling, going forward there. Another thing that I can do, because when I rotated the particles here, you can see it's looking nice, but the particles look a bit stretched, and that is because I rotated this layer in 3D. So I'm actually seeing the particles like from the side view in some way. So what I can do is I can open the layer properties of the particle here just by double clicking. And in the face camera option here, I will put, I think it was, let me think, I think it's face image on plane Y axis. So when I do that, I did it wrong. It wasn't Y, it was X, I think. Let me try again. Yeah. So now when I do that, the particles will rotate themselves to be always facing to the camera. So they are still a little circle. They are not like a flat thing. They are a little circle. So even when I rotate them in 3D, I still keep like this circular or this kind of a spherical shape. So that is something you can do with this kind of particles. Another thing that you can do, and in this case, I will create a sky, but I want something more like a sky on the day here. And I will create a vector layer. So I created the background there, and with the vector layer, I will simply create a line here, and I will paint this line, and I want it to be very thick. And I will apply a brush. Let me see what brush could work here. All right, let's say this one, but I want this to be white. All right. And now, again, I will create a little cycle. So this one will start very small, and then very big, and then small again, and I will create a cycle with that. I have this, and now I will put this into a particle layer. So I will put this one inside of a particle. Again, by default, the particle is throwing this, but I will change the values of the particle because I don't want anything to be thrown there. And I will set the lifetime to 0. So now I have the particle there. And now what I am going to do is I will create another vector layer inside of the particle. I will call this vector layer base, okay? And I will put it at the bottom of the particle. So you can see I have the base and then I have the particle there, all right? And now inside of this base, I will just draw, let's say, I will just an oval here, and I will distort it a little bit, like that. All right, let's say this is exactly what I want to create there. Okay, and now if I hit play, this is part of the particle, so I just created something very ugly. But what I am going to do is select the particle layer and go to the particle properties and click on here, use base layer as source. So now what is happening is that Moho is using the shape I created to be used as the source of the layer. So basically I can create, I can control the shape that the particles will follow. So let me just increase this. Maybe I want 1000 particles here. So I have this, maybe 1000 is too much, 500 there. And now again, I will select randomize playback. So now I have the particles moving in a different way. So now you can see the particles. I'm trying to create something like a cloud, if you didn't realize that. So now I have that. So basically I can create any shape I want with this. So I will modify this on frame 0. So let's say I want this cloud to look like a rabbit, you know. So let's say I want something like that. And now my cloud looks like a rabbit. So this is some of the stuff you can do with particles, and it's very easy to do. And again, maybe the cycle is too fast, so I will make it way slower. So now it looks like that. So yeah, it's just brushes and particles. Another thing that you can do with particles, and again, I will open, I hope I'm not going too fast. Actually, let me check the chat. No, I can't see the questions yet, but anyway, if I am going too fast, you can complain at the end of the webinar, and then there will be nothing to do, really, sorry. But I will open the library again. And now I want to open another character. Which I don't remember. It was one of the characters from maybe version 11. Let me look at this. Yeah, the space woman here. So I will open this as a template. All right, so we have this scene here. I will simplify the scene a little bit. I will remove this duplicate layer. But we have a character, and the character has bones and has some animation. All right. And what I can do is I can simply create any particle I want. So I will just create a new layer here, and let's suppose I create I will try to do something like this. So I will create a circle, and it will have this color, right? And I will rotate this circle in 3D here. So I'm just rotating it down in 3D, maybe a little bit less like that. And I will move it down. Maybe it will be 42 frames and it will move down. I will remove the camera movement here because I don't want the camera. So suppose I have that, maybe a bit more there. All right, so I simply have one layer going down. So now I can put this inside of a particle layer. So create a particle layer, put this inside. Again, the particle will be throwing this, the circle. Actually, let me see, the lifetime of this is 42. The animation is 42 frames, so I will set the lifetime of the particle at 42 and 100 particles. And now I will reduce these values to 0 and also this one. So basically I have these circles going down there. Maybe I have too many. Maybe I want 30 circles and I want them evenly spaced, so they are all appearing at an even pace. And maybe I want less, maybe I want 10. All right. Yeah, let's say something like that. So I have this animation, and let's say to make it better, I want the particle to grow in the last frame, but also to the particle to disappear. So I have this animation. So now I have that. All right. So now what I can do is I can take this particle layer and I can put it inside of the bone layer. So I will put it behind the body and over the back. So now the particle layer is here. And what I will do is I will put it here next to this backpack. And I will attach with the bind layer tool. I will attach the entire particle layer to this bone at the chest. So now if I hit play, now the particle is following the movement of the character. Now, I know it's not looking great so far, but we are going to adjust a couple things. So I will select the particle here and going to the particle properties. And the first thing is I will do is uncheck orient particles, because I don't want the particles to rotate with the movement of the woman. So I will do that. And now I will add some damping because I want the particles to stay in the place. And maybe I will add some speed to go down. So now the character is drawing these circles there. All right. So the character, maybe I need more. Maybe I need 50 particles there. So now you can see the character is drawing that. And maybe I need them to go down a bit more. Maybe like that. I don't know. You can try that. But we basically have two options. If I apply this option, you can see that the particles are being thrown and they are following the character, but it feels like they have like this tail movement. But if I uncheck free floating here, you can see the particles are actually only following the character. They are not reacting to the rest of the world. So maybe if I want something like a, let me just put 10 here again. If I want this backpack to be drawing these circles here, like some kind of a special effect here, I can do that, and you can see how the particles are just moving there, not reacting to the rest of the character. I don't know how much you can see the actual movement of the particle, but I promise you it is happening there. I will move them down a little bit more. So we have that, for instance, and also currently the particles we have been, they have been alive during the entire animation, but I can also animate when they appear. So what I can do is again select the particle layer, select the particle tool here, and I will set on frame 0, I will set them to be off there. And now if I go to any other frame, I can set them to be on. So the particle will start appearing at this frame. So maybe I want them to appear here, and then I want them to be off again. So they will appear only from there. And maybe then I want the particles to appear and disappear, and maybe I want to create a cycle with this. So I don't have to animate that anymore. So now I have a cycle of when the particles appear. So I have that. Nothing too fancy, but it's something that you can explore. Maybe this is not the best example, but if you have a character that is throwing bubbles, for instance, if you have a character under the water throwing bubbles, you can do that. And the more damping you apply, the more it will follow the original movement there. So we have that. All right. There is something else I want to show you. Many people from that saw the videos from we made for My Father's Dragon, they were asking about the rain scene there. If you haven't seen it, it's based on a rain that was created by the effects team at Cartoon Saloon. But I was trying to reproduce that effects that was created with traditional animation. I was trying to reproduce that with Moho. So I want to show you how that was done with particles too. All right. So I will create this rain. So the first thing I will do is I need to do this because I'm going to use a tool that works this way. But the first thing I will do is to create a horizontal line, and I will paint it. And now I will split it on some points here. So maybe I can change the line width a little bit, and maybe I want it a bit longer like that. All right, so this is a simple line. It has 5 points and different line width. And now I will call this particle. And now I will create another vector layer. And I will call this one path. Okay, and this one will be a simple line like this. It will have a little curve like that. And what I will do with the particle is I will select the particle on frame 0, and I will select the follow path tool, And with this tool, we can tell a layer to follow the path of another layer. So if I click with this tool, if I click over this this other layer, you can see how it is following the path. So I can animate that. I can give it some values, but I can also tell the layer to bend with the path. And in order to do that, I just press Alt on the keyboard and click the path. And you can see how the layer now it's bending on the path. All right. So what I'm going to do is in frame 1, I want the layer to start here. And let's say in frame 25, I want the layer to end here. So we have that. All right. And now if I create a particle layer on frame 0, I can put this particle inside. And now the particle is throwing all this, but I will reduce the values to 0 because I don't want to throw anything. And I have this. All right, and this layer should be 25 frames long, and I will increase the line width. So now I have this. So I have some kind of rain happening here. And the good part of this rain is that I can simply select the path and I can actually animate that and change the curvature and change anything I want there. And the particle will follow that. So if you make it more straight like that, you can have a rain, okay? But, and of course you can change the speed of the particle, how far it falls and other things like that. But you have a rain here, but if I bend it, maybe I can create a waterfall with that. And if I have a waterfall, maybe I can, again, I created the particle, I'm happy with what I created, and now I can simply duplicate it. And maybe in the duplicate, I will select it, and since we are creating a waterfall, I will just paint it blue and maybe increase the line width and apply a brush, let's say. So now I have this, which is not great, but you can play with this. And one nice thing about animating stuff like waterfalls is that inside of this animation, you know, I have 25 frames to animate this. So maybe what I want is that in the middle, when this is falling to this curve, maybe I want this to be brighter. Okay, so I just changed the color here, and then I want it to go back to its normal color. So I have that animation like that. And now if I go back to the particle, you can see how I animated some kind of bright there. So I can add different things, and of course I can maybe the waterfall is falling here, and I can create another vector layer. And maybe this one will be a simple line with another brush here, and I will just center this one here, and I will make this bigger and smaller, and maybe that's it. And I will create a cycle with this. Again, I really like to make cycles, and now I will put this inside of a particle layer. So I'm creating a second particle layer, and now I have this, but I want this particle to be around here. I will just put it here, and I will change the values of the particle. So maybe I don't want velocity, I don't want the spread, I don't want any of that. I just want some width there. And I will paint this one white. So now this is the foam that is forming there, and maybe I want less particles, maybe 10. And now I have that. So you can see how quick it is to create these kind of things. And similar to this, and this is another question I always get, if I open the library again, and now I will look for Kukulkán, which is the dragon, I mean, not the dragon, the Mexican god that we are always showing and we used for the cover of this webinar. I will open this as a template. And I hope this file makes more sense for you now, but you can see the rocks here that are floating around. These rocks are simple images that are inside of a particle layer. So if I open Kukulkán, I can select here rocks 2, for instance, and you have, this is a particle layer that has the rocks, and the rocks are actually following a path, and I can show you, this is the path they are showing. So it's the same effect I used for the rain, but in this case, the path is more complex, and also the path is being bent by the character. So all these rocks are actually just layers that are following that path. So just like the drops there. So yeah, that's how the effect is created, and I can show you something simpler. So let's suppose, let me just reset this. So let's suppose this is our rock, okay? And I will create a path here. And I will create a simple circle here, but I will distort it a little bit. Let's say something like that. So what I can do now is I can select my rock and I can apply it to the path. Actually, something very important. It's good this happened to me now. If you draw a particle, it's important to center it to the layer. Especially if you are not sure about what you are doing, you will avoid a lot of problems if you have this centered. So you can see the origin of the layer is here, is this cross. So it's good to draw there in the middle, right? So now I will make this rock to follow the path. And what I will do is I will say, okay, on frame 0, it will be, on frame 1, it will be a 0%, and let's say on frame 72 it will be a 100%. So the rock is moving like that, and I will create a cycle with this again. So now the rock is making this cycle, and I will set this keyframe as linear because I want this rock to move always at the same speed. And now I can simply create a particle layer again. So I put this rock inside of the particle layer, and now I select the particle tool, and I will reduce all these values to 0. And I need to set the lifetime of the particle. It will be 72 frames. So I will set this 72 frames, and let's say 100 particles there. And we have that. And I can also, in the meantime, I don't know, the rock can be rotating. So I can rotate this layer too, and I will set an additive cycle here. So it will continue rotating, and maybe it will be scaling up and down during this animation. So I will create a cycle for the scale too. So anyway, I have that now, and now I can move the path and the rocks will follow that path. So that is how that was done. So the only difference here is that the path is actually inside of a bone layer. So I can put the path inside of a bone layer, and now I can create a few bones. And I can animate the bones, and the bones will animate the rocks. So it is really that simple. So I really hope this helped you to understand the system. Once you get what the tools are, and once you know that you can reduce all the values to 0, it can be very powerful. Because I really like when the software helps you to create some stuff, but I like more when the software gives you the opportunity to animate your own stuff and help you later. And I really feel that the particles can do that. So you manually animate the rocks, and then you just use the particle to multiply the animation. The same with the waterfall, the same with different kind of particles. So yeah, I hope that was useful for you. And Mario, if there is any question or comment, or someone is angry, I don't know, please let me
So
know.
no one is hungry,
Oh.
but we appreciate a lot the presentation. It was really fun to watch how particles, all the possibilities of particles. And we also want to thank everybody who joined us today. There are a lot of people watching from the US, like, let me check, McCoy from Arizona, there's Larry from Florida, Pierre from France, Alexander from Germany, Patrick from US, but he from Myanmar. So thank you all. Now I see that people is interacting in the question panel even more. So,
sorry, Mario.
one question.
Sorry, Mario. Before that, sorry, I just remembered someone. It was someone's birthday today, and that person asked me to say happy birthday in some of the social medias. I don't remember on my YouTube or on Instagram, in the Moho Instagram or somewhere. But this person, happy birthday to that person. I don't remember the name.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you know who you are, so happy birthday. Wyoming, Trish from Wyoming. Okay, so one of the questions that was repeated was about, let me check. Yes, if the particles can interact with wind, with the other feature of Moho.
No, at the moment they don't interact with wind. Technically, if you put a bone layer inside of a particle and that bone layer has wind applied, then yeah, the wind will be applied to the particles. But technically, no, they don't follow any wind.
Mm-hmm. It can be tricked depending on each one's needs, right?
Yeah, I mean you can simulate wind like in the example. In this example I showed to you. Let me just. I need to confess a secret. I don't have a keyboard anymore because I just threw water over it during the webinar. So I will be moving with the mouse only now. But if you see here, like this dust, it doesn't follow any wind, but I simulated that it's following the wind just by moving the layer to the side. But yeah, technically that is not automatic wind, really.
Mm-hmm. And another question that was repeated was if can particles interact or bounce with other objects, right? Vector objects.
No, at the moment there are no physical properties on the particles. So you can again you can simulate the stuff, or you can even, because we have physics, so you can apply physics to a layer, and then you could put that layer into a particle layer, so you will have that multiplied, but that doesn't mean that the particle is doing the physical operation, if that makes sense. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, you can animate the particle depending on what you want to do.
Basically, whatever you can animate in Moho, whatever tool you have, you can put that inside of a particle. So you can put like images, 3D objects, physics objects, bones, whatever. You just put that inside of the particle group.
Yes, actually, that was another question from Limbo, like if you can use images to animate.
Limbo, is that the
particles.
one that I think he is his birthday, no? Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't
Limbo,
remember.
let us
Sorry.
know in the question panelist if you,
Please.
today's your birthday is today. Also, Arisu says, watching from Iran, currently using Moho for my game, but I hope to make a series, and this webinar helped a bunch. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, what was the question, Mario?
No, it wasn't a question, but
Okay.
was saying that he's watching from Iran, working on his video game, and this webinar really helped him a lot. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and I really hope things get better in Iran too.
Yes. Another question: if actually, is there something that you couldn't present with the time we had? Is there something that was left on the presentation?
Yeah, I wanted to show some threshold particles, but yeah, I prioritized some other stuff, but maybe I will try to do it only with the mouse, not showing you the entire thing, but showing you what I wanted to show.
Yeah, perfect.
But you
Thank
can,
you.
no problem. If you go again to the library and you open this character for 13.5, I will open it as a template. The fire of this character, I think if you render it, if you render a preview. No, this is a bad example. Let me look for another one. Let me just open the other keyboard. Give me 1 second. I think if I search for fire, this one. There is one called fire threshold. So basically, we have a very simple particle here, and you can see that there are just little ovals moving there. But if we render this, this is how it looks really. So it looks like a single shape. Maybe this is not the best frame to show, but it looks like a single frame of color, and that is done because it has the threshold applied. So that if you see that in movement, it can be very cool because you have like a single shape that is distorting and some parts are disappearing. So we have another one. Let me search for fire again. Another of these examples. This one, fire threshold 2. So again, you can see this one is like some boxes, but actually when you render this, it looks more like this. So you can see it creates some kind of envelope for the entire shape, and in movement it looks much nicer. Really, I don't have the time to render this at the moment, but if you want, please take those files and render them on your computer, and you will see the results. And the way this works is you can, let me see. Okay, I will actually use this one. You can take any layer, and if you open the properties, you can apply some blur to the layer. So let me just add, I don't know, this amount of blur, and I will preview this. And you have this blur now. But now over that blur, you can apply some threshold. So if I apply that, I can render the preview. And you can see I have this kind of envelope, and I have some very crazy colors here. But you can see that it's trying to create only one shape with all those balls. So if I make the blur bigger, I will get a simpler shape. You see there, so the particles are generating this simpler shape. So now to avoid these weird colors, I can colorize this layer. And let's say I want it to be red. So I apply that. And if I preview this, now I have this red shape. So from the simple circles I had in the particle, I actually now have like this kind of complex shape, and it moves. In movement, it looks very nice, and you can apply different effects, and you can also apply masks over it. So you can have one layer adding to the mask and another layer subtracting from the mask, so you can create some very nice effects. So maybe in the future I can show you how to do that.
And we're running out of time, but one last question is, how can you export any of these particle renders?
You just go to File, Export Animation. Just like this is the way you export any scene in Moho. So you go to Export Animation, and then here you can tell the software in what format you want to export, and you have different options here, and here you can pick in what folder you want to export that, and then you hit OK, and the software will start rendering the scene. So Yeah, so it's a very simple process, really.
All right, well, thank you also. I mean, thanks for the webinar. Thank you all who joined us today. Many of you asked if this webinar is being recorded, and yes, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moho Animation. You will receive a notification once the webinar is available to watch. Victor, I don't know if you can share the last slide from the PowerPoint.
I don't know where the PowerPoint is anymore. I found it. Yeah, I can share that. Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
So yeah,
as a reminder, follow us in all our social media channels, well, YouTube, subscribe, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Thank you all who follow us on Instagram. We just reached the 10,000 followers organically. So this is only the community that it's been following us, not only on YouTube, which is our biggest one, but we really thank you all who join us on Instagram. So without further ado, thanks again, Victor.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Pierre, and everyone else. All the other names I don't remember at the moment, but thank you, everyone, for watching this.
Yes, and please stay tuned for more webinars, informations, reels about the community and promotions. Stay tuned. So we hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.